It's me, Professor Tree, and today I'm going to be exploring the history of ZYGARDE and its connection to the Paldea region. Right out of the gate, as I'm sure you all know already, ZYGARDE's forms are based on Loki's children from Norse mythology, with the 10% form being his wolf son and the 50% form being the world serpent, his other son, which is like a giant snake. Now that you know that, let's move on to the fact that ZYGARDE plays a very important role in the Pokémon games and anime, that being that it protects the natural order of things and the world's nature and its creatures that live in the various biomes and environments. So with that, I feel like we've got a great base for the theory already, as if we look at it from the perspective of Koraidon represents the past and protecting the past, Miraidon represents the future and protecting the future, then ZYGARDE would make the perfect puzzle piece to fit in that gap in between that protects the present. And when you think about it, the Area Zero crater does look like it was created by some sort of explosion rather than something like a meteor or a comet hitting the Earth, and that's what makes me think that AZ's ultimate weapon was being fired at Paldea during the war between Kalos and the unknown region that we see in the X and Y storyline. Now I know what you must be thinking, Professor Tree, aren't you grasping at straws a little? And to that, trainers, I say, to get the juice you've got to grasp the straw, and the juice in this instance is the fact that ZYGARDE has so many potential ties to Paldea, and I'm gonna break them down all for you right now. The first main tie to the Paldea region is the fact that hexagons, something that's very key to ZYGARDE's design being made up of hexagonal cells, is all over Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, from the hexagons on the terastallization crowns to just the hexagons used in other various aspects of the designs across the terastal gimmick, which really makes me think that somehow terastallization is tied to ZYGARDE. One of my other main reasons is the fact that, as I've said many times before, Paldea and Kalos share a geographical land border, and it would make so much sense for ZYGARDE, a legendary of Kalos, to travel between the two countries, especially during a war which, as people know, affects the local environment and ecosystems heavily, with things like explosions, fires, forest fires, and more, damaging the local ecosystems of the world, which would most likely provoke the anger of ZYGARDE, the natural order's protector. But moving away from speculation and now using in-game evidence for this theory, the various books across the two games, the Scarlet book and the Violet book, both describe the third legendary as having a hexagonal pattern on its skin or like a shell. And what Pokemon do we know that has hexagonal patterns as a part of its main design trait? That's right, ZYGARDE. And for me personally, it makes so much sense that ZYGARDE is the third legendary, as I imagine that the escaped past Pokemon would disrupt the natural order of the Paldean ecosystem and most likely provoke the wrath of ZYGARDE, which could be the beginning of the DLC storyline. We will just have to wait and see though. And if we look at the box legendaries for Pokemon X and Y, Xerneas definitely represents the Norse depiction of life, and Yveltal represents the dark depiction of death, or the Grim Reaper, in Norse mythology. So in that trio, ZYGARDE represents rebirth and new beginnings, as well as the continuation of life that was granted by Xerneas. So to me, since we already know all three will be making a return, I can see there being some kind of connection between ZYGARDE and the Scarlet and Violet box legendaries, whether ZYGARDE goes all upgrade and does a Necrozma to our legendary, or simply transforms into a new form altogether. We will have to wait and see. But overall, I think there's a lot of evidence pointing towards this theory potentially being correct, mainly because the fact that we have the leak proving from Centro that we will be seeing Xerneas, Yveltal, and ZYGARDE again, as well as complete form ZYGARDE, really adds merit to this theory and really makes me think it's going to end up being true. So overall, there's definitely plenty of evidence pointing towards this theory being correct. Of course, it could turn out to be wrong though, so keep that in mind. This is all speculation from a fan that wants some cool stuff out of the Pokemon Company, and hoping that this will persuade them, if not for the DLC, maybe for a future release or remake. Maybe the Pokemon Company will listen. With that being said, however, I really do think there's a lot of merit to this theory, and so does the vast majority of the fan base. I mean, I've seen countless theories that are similar to this on Reddit and other platforms, talking about how ZYGARDE is the best candidate for a third legendary in the trio. And given the fact that, like, Legends Arceus didn't really deliver any new legendaries outside of Enamorus, we're kind of used to the fact of them recycling existing legendaries in new regions. Like the fact that we had, like, the Kanto birds made with Galar forms in Sword and Shield. It's not out of the question for the Pokemon Company to repurpose an existing legendary to fit a new narrative. And honestly, it makes way more sense to do that, because ZYGARDE is this overarching, almost godlike Pokemon, which could honestly, in my opinion, be on the same level of power as, say, like Dialga or Palkia. So ultimately, we don't know what's gonna happen. We don't know if the Pokemon Company are gonna remotely deliver something like this for the DLC, but I mean, there's so much evidence. It's so likely that it will be, and will be the actual final result. We just have to wait and see, and hopefully they'll deliver something that's not just only amazing, but brilliant for the audience as well. But before I conclude this video, there is a couple final little points that I want to point out, and that's the fact that the Terrestrial Crowns, yes, they have the hexagonal pattern on it, but someone on Reddit, who, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to remain nameless because I genuinely can't remember your username, is the fact that it has eyes on the little hexagon that sort of everyone's saying is like the terrestrialization symbol. And to me personally, that seems like such an unnecessary detail, unless it's referencing maybe whatever this Pokemon is that's connected to the terrestrial gimmick, watching over the natural order of things in the Pokemon world. And when you think about it like that, ZYGARDE being the Pokemon that's watching over these other Pokemon through the terrestrialization gimmick makes so much sense. I mean, think about it. Terrestrialization is like almost like a negative version of Mega Evolution, in terms of Mega Evolution gives you a physical form change and a boost in power, whilst terrestrialization doesn't change your form but gives you a new boost in power. And I would guess you could technically say that the crown is almost like an exhaust of that, so it's like the excess being formed into a physical object, which makes it really interesting to think about, because obviously Mega Evolution is man-made in nature when you think about the fact that AZ essentially created Megastones when he fired the ultimate weapon back in the storyline of X and Y. So when you take that into account, it makes a lot of sense to me personally that maybe the DLC of Scarlet and Violet is going to touch on the natural order of the world of Pokemon, and how ZYGARDE and other legendary Pokemon keep the balance, so to speak. Or maybe I'm talking out of my out of thin air. We'll have to wait and see. I personally think there's a lot of merit to all of this, and feel free in the comments down below to tell me what you think. If you've got any ideas, I would love to hear them, because you know me, I love reading your comments, I love replying to your comments, and it would be really cool to see what you guys in the fan base, the people who help keep this franchise alive, think about this idea and this theory. But of course, that is just a theory. Again, what do you mean you sent a cease and desist? Why are you crying? Alright, fine, I'll fix it. Okay, that's just a Poke theory. Thanks for watching.